My name is Christopher Landy, and I am your Student Association President. Thank you. And I've been given the pleasure to introduce a warm welcome back. So I'd like to welcome you all back. Hopefully everyone had a pleasurable summer. It was filled with rest and relaxation, as we're going to have a full and busy year this year. In fact, I'm excited about this year. I feel excited because I was able to come early and watch our freshmen come in and start orientation and go through their course here. And they were ready to work together. They were ready to help each other out, go through the ropes course. They were ready to get involved. Some of them are already trying to participate in student government as well as start clubs. And they're ready to move forward with their academic year and their studies. And this does not just stay at our freshmen. This expands all the way to our institution. We are ready to move forward, especially in the area of nanotechnology. Coming soon, our Nanotechnology Center will be here at SUNYIT, as well as we have a partnership with UAlbany. This will be the Computer Chip Hybrid Integration Partnership, for short, CHIP. And it will be an interregional, cross-university structure for promoting nanoelectronics industry. So these are just some of the starts of our opportunities of us moving forward here at SUNYIT. And finally, once again, I'd like to welcome everyone back and let it not be only a good semester, but a great year. And now I have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker, President Wolf. Yay.
Well, thank you and good afternoon. On behalf of faculty, staff, and students here at SUNYIT, I'd like to welcome all of you back, as well as our community members participating in this convocation exercise. As you know, this is a special week here in Central New York. In the golf arena, I heard Tiger Woods was in town playing his round of golf. In music, we have Bruce Springsteen, I heard, was jamming last night in Verona. And in the area of academics and nanotechnology, we have our convocation speaker, Dr. Sally Tinkle. So it's a pretty busy week here in Central New York. So we're going to start our academic year with a theme. And this year's theme is technology innovation. Last year was entrepreneurship. And as you know, a year before that was service-based learning, and before that, ethics, and before that, we had sustainability. So each year, we decide to capture a theme, and this year's theme is technology innovation. And we're really fortunate to have with us today the Deputy Director of National Nanotechnology Coordination Office, which is an arm of National Science and Technology Council, NSTC. It has an important responsibility of coordinating all the nanotechnology research and development and education and everything else that has nano label to it for this nation. United States has become the leader in nanotechnology, and I think our students are going to be direct beneficiary of all the development that's taking place and all the build out that we're going to be doing here on our campus. Soon you will see our Center for Advanced Technology Computer Chip Commercialization Center, or Quad-C, on our campus. Along with that, there have already been several companies that are interested in locating here, which will produce internship and co-op opportunities for you, as well as the new businesses for our community. It's a win-win thing. So we're excited that we're able to kick off our convocation with a technology innovation theme and nanotechnology as a centerpiece of that. Dr. Sally Tinkle, she is not only an effective facilitator, administrator of our federal government, but she is also our researcher in basic sciences as well as in the clinical sciences. Inside of your pamphlet, you'll see her credentials, so I won't read them to you. but she is a Billiken. She did her undergraduate work at St. Louis University, and she had received her graduate degrees from the School of Medicine at University of Colorado. She has become a great friend of SUNY Institute of Technology, and with that, I introduce Dr. Sally Tinkle.
Thank you. I want to thank President Ye for inviting me to come today. There is something so exciting about the start of every school year. And in Washington, I'm far removed from academics, so it's a pleasure to be here. I wanted to talk today to you all about not just technology innovation, what I see in nanotechnology, but where you might find yourself in nanotechnology innovation. It's a large landscape, and I'd like to spend the last little time together to examine that. I want to start by quoting someone we all know well, Steve Jobs, who in a Stanford commencement address said, "You can't connect the dots, you can only look forward by connecting the dots backwards." And then from that, using your instinct, your gut, destiny, in order to plan what comes next. So this is an example of technology, phone technology, communications technology, which is now critical to our lifestyles. And by connecting the dots backwards, planning where the next communication devices will be. I want to talk a little bit about the role of people who participated in that technology innovation, as well as all of the others. The visionaries are critical to technological innovation, to any innovation. And I show two examples of that here. One is from science fiction. This is Jules Verne, who in 1870 was writing about renewable energy, using water for clean energy. 1870. We have many examples from science fiction. My generation, it was Star Trek. Your generation may be The Matrix and the Transformers. But these people can imagine the future unfettered by reality or by scientific laws, the laws of physics. So they actually provide guideposts and signs for us to follow. The other is Stephen Feynman, who is one of the leaders, early leaders in nanotechnology, and in 1959 gave a famous speech which is entitled, "There's Plenty of Room at the Bottom." And he actually recommended people start looking at the nanoscale and develop tools and abilities to manipulate matter in the nanoscale. And he challenged his audience to be able to write the entire 24 volumes of the Encyclopedia Britannica on the head of a pen. He felt that was feasible at the nanoscale. A visionary, long-term view of reality that 2 weeks ago became reality. The example here is of the enablers who are critical to the development of innovation. The enablers are the ones who see the vision and know how to make it happen. So this is an example of data storage. The researchers from Harvard last week published a technology, a new DNA sequencing technology, in which they encoded this 5-megabit book, Regenesis, in DNA. And they postulated that they could encode the entire information in the internet through this technology in about 4 grams of DNA and a device about the size of your thumb. So what started as a vision is enabled into a reality and an application. So we don't have that thumb-sized device yet, but we're well on our way, and we have the technological innovation driving that development. So that's pretty cool. That's a flash drive that now contains the information on the internet. So we have visionaries, we have enablers, and we have skeptics. Skeptics are critical for us in the development of new technology and new science. I'm particularly enamored by this quote from Charles Duell: "Everything that has been invented, that can be invented, has been invented." He said this in 1899. He was the commissioner of the U.S. Patent Office. Thank goodness he was wrong. We have here Lord Kelvin saying that airplanes are impossible to develop, and even if we developed them, they'll never have a military role. So the skeptics, what do? They make us go back and re-examine our thinking. They make us ask critical questions that we might otherwise gloss over. So critics and skeptics are important. I love this one from Thomas Watson. There's a worldwide market for 5 computers, and we'll never need individual computers. So these people then refine our thinking. So you have the visionaries, you have the enablers, you have the skeptics. Now I want to talk about a little bit about what powers innovation. We're looking here at the power of collaboration. This is an iconic photograph from 1927. The golden age of physics was in the 20s and 30s. Not that physics has stopped. This was just a particular moment in time where you have Einstein, Madame Curie, Niels Bohr, that individuals, physicists who came together, who worked individually and then worked together and drove science forward, drove innovation forward faster and more effectively because they shared their thoughts together, because they collaborated and worked together. So there's power in collaboration. Tools also power innovation, and they power it in 2 ways. Tools can be the result of technological innovation, or they can drive technological innovation. And here you have, we are all familiar with, or you will be over the course of your studies, familiar with Raman spectroscopy. This is the gentleman that invented it. Here is the first electron microscope developed in Germany in 1939, the 2 who won the Nobel Prize for the scanning tunnel microscope, and the electron force microscope, all advances in how we image and manipulate matter. The atomic force microscope created the ability to image and manipulate matter at tenths of nanometers. With this tool, nanotechnology was truly born. So nanotechnology, so tools can drive technology, technological innovation. I don't have the tool I need to see whatever it is I want to see or to measure. And then we go back to as close as we can get and we figure out how to make it better. Exactly what happened here. So this awaits you as you take the atomic force microscope and move it to the mesoscale or whatever is the next scale length for material science. And there's power in converging technologies. You are at a unique moment in time where science is moving so rapidly, information accumulating so rapidly that our technologies and our innovations are overlapping. And this is just an example where we look at computer technology along its timeline, distributed intelligence or information technology, and nanotechnology. And all of these 3 are critical in today's technological innovation. Computers are maturing. Distributed intelligence is about its inflection point in time, and nanotechnology is in its infancy. So converging technologies, as you are no longer just a physicist or just an engineer or just a chemist, you now have to know something across these disciplines. You need to be multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, in order to understand the ramifications of science. Converging technologies allows us to identify common principles or concepts that we share across multiple disciplines that were previously stovepiped, and bring them together and appreciate the power that exists in that. The storage of information in DNA is an example of that. Information technology coming together with biology, learning how biology, who stored our whole body structure in the nucleus of our cells, how did that happen in a way that we can now store information and access it and manipulate it? So converging technologies bring science together in new ways. So through enabling technologies, we can enable innovation through these converging technologies. And this is the cover of Nature Materials for September. And this is a bibliometric analysis of all the scientific articles they published in the previous year. And those that are in the darkest color and largest have the most information behind them. What's important about this is the number of concepts, materials, structures that are listed here that came together for advancing materials science. And you see nanotechnology, while nanoparticles is one of the larger words here, it's integrated throughout the background here. Some technologies, like nanotechnology, are enabling technologies. They are the materials that will let you solve other problems, that will let you solve a data storage problem, a medical delivery problem, across the sectors of our economy. So, enabling technologies. So how does nanotechnology serve as an example of these components of nanotechnology? It's multidisciplinary, it employs converging technologies, and it is both revolutionary and evolutionary. So first of all, we have the visionaries, leaders, collaborators, and enablers. They're all over the place. You may know many of the people in these pictures. But this photograph also expands the roles, the people who are involved in creating technology innovation. So you have the scientists all through here. This is the gentleman who discovered how to make the carbon nanotube. These are the gentlemen who, the Graphene Brothers, as one of my postdocs calls them, who received the Nobel Prize in 2010 for their graphene work. So we have the scientists, we have the engineers, the chemists, the physicists, all the disciplines represented. But we have a few which may be surprises to you. The Nanotechnology Initiative was actually launched under President Clinton, signed into law by President Bush, and supported regularly by President Obama. This is a top-down, bottom-up approach. So the scientists, the students, you are the bottom pushing up with all your ideas and discoveries. And this is the top helping to create the infrastructure where we meet in the middle and the magic happens. The science and the innovation happen. So you have legislators, congresspersons, as well as the Office of Science and Technology people, the people who on a day-to-day basis drive the infrastructure for science forward. We also have in nanotechnology the vision that was developed, and actually on this slide, the vision was predominantly developed by Mike Rocco at NSF in collaboration with Tom Khalil and OSTP back in 1998 and 1999. That's how long it takes to get government going. And when you're going to have a new emerging technology, it's useful if the vision spans stages or phases. And that was how nanotechnology was envisioned, that the first phase of nanotechnology was passive nanostructures, and we have those today, coatings on windmills to make them function more effectively, on airplanes, lots of devices ceramics that are being developed, cerium oxide as a fuel additive. So we are very much full bore into the passive nanostructure phase of nanotechnology and moving into the active nanostructures phase. And these are materials such as transistors, drug targeters, and some adaptive technologies, and I'll show you some examples of those. These are what I think of as evolutionary products. They take existing products and they make them better. They either form a composite or some component of something we already have and improve its functionality. The next two generations I think of as actually revolutionary. These are the systems of nanosystems and molecular nanosystems. So increasing levels of complexity, and these involve more self-assembly, more activities, or new products, disruptive technologies that are totally dependent on or composed of nanomaterials. So these then become the revolutionary products that didn't exist before, that fill niches that needed to be filled. So we have this long-term phase, and although we optimistically put in 2010, 2015 to 2020, we're really very much into phase 1 and 2 and moving into phase 3. So a long-term vision in nanotechnology. And if you're going to have a vision, you better have a way to focus what you're thinking about. So the nanoscale is 1 to 1,000 nanometers. However, the useful properties for advanced materials is found predominantly, although not exclusively, in the 1 to 100 nanometer range. So we focus nanotechnology on understanding and controlling matter in the 1 to 100 nanometer range, where the unique phenomenon occur. And so we want to be able to image, measure, model, manipulate, and take advantage of those unique phenomena. So those unique phenomena are changes in optical properties. Materials that are inert in the macro scale now conduct electricity in the nanoscale. Here we have a picture of quantum dots. These vials vary from by about 5 nanometers apiece, and the optical properties change, so their color changes, and they fluoresce differently. So very minute changes causing significant change in the properties and the functionality of these materials. So the ability to capture those functions, the ability to precisely design and engineer these materials is the promise of nanotechnology. So the government, in its infinite wisdom, stepped in under our presidential leadership over 3 administrations to try and coordinate nanotechnology across the federal government. This is research that is too big. It's a field of science too large for any one industry, even the semiconductor industry, to promote on its own. So the government steps in to provide support through funding mechanisms. Here, 26 federal agencies came together. This is my job, to get them to agree and collaborate. It's a lot of fun where I work. And our job is to advance nanotechnology for economic benefit, national security, and to improve the quality of life. Pretty high-level goals. But what it all means is develop this science to do good for the world. And so that's what we set out to do. And so here's some examples. This is nanotechnology solving critical problems in transportation. So this is the Piranha. This is a boat that actually exists. It's 50 feet long. The first one got sold to a private security company to go after the pirates off of Somalia. It has decking and siding that's composed of nanocomposites that do just this. They make the boat 5 times lighter, have a 5 times greater range, 3 times the payload, because remember, nanocomposites are lighter and thinner and stronger than the materials they're replacing. And now you have less fuel consumption than conventional boats of the same size. So this would be a great one to play in the lake, to use on the lake, because it could really spin you around. So this is the promise of nanotechnology coming to fruition. Nanotechnology is also being used extensively in paint coatings on automobiles, in composite parts on airplanes. Lockheed Martin has a very strong nanotechnology program where we're developing nanocomposites and nanoproducts to replace existing components on airplanes. One of the big breakthroughs they're really working towards is to use carbon nanotubes to replace all the copper wiring on airplanes. And when they do that, they can decrease the weight of the plane so significantly that it will truly be revolutionary in aerospace. Nanotechnology here in security and another component of aerospace application. This diagram here shows you a carbon nanotube. Carbon nanotubes woven into a fiber using old-fashioned textile weaving technologies. You gotta love it. We talk about converging technologies, converging centuries, and then woven into wire, and then woven into sheets of fabric. So these sheets of fabric were layered here to make a flak jacket to protect our security and war fighters in the field. So it's lighter, it's breathable, and it's not as cumbersome to wear. It's the same sheet of carbon nanotube fibers was used on the Juno satellite. It is placed in strategic locations in across the engine to drain electrostatic charge so that everything will stay functional longer and not overheat. So the beauty of nanotechnology is given the properties, the applications are phenomenal, and the range of applications huge. Automobile bumpers, flat screen TVs, all contain some carbon, or not all, but many of the products contain some carbon nanotubes today. So we have a lot of products going into market. Nanomedicine is another incredible area for development, and this is an example of a new medical platform. This medical platform is what we call a dendrimer. It's a nanoscale protein molecule onto which we can hook an imaging agent, the chemotherapeutic drug, here methotrexate, and an imaging molecule. So when we inject this intravenously, because of the targeting molecule, it goes exactly to the tumor, because the targeting molecule we use is a lock and key mechanism to a molecule on the surface of tumor cells. And so they target the cells. Here you can see we designed the experiment so that we had different colors of fluorescence in different locations. So we can not only find the tumor, we can treat it, and we can see the effect we're having. Is the chemotherapeutic effective, and is the size of the tumor shrinking? What does this do for chemotherapeutic treatment? For those of us that have family members in cancer treatment, your hair doesn't fall out, you're not sick to your stomach, you can go on with the tasks of daily living because we can give such small amounts of the chemotherapeutic drug and target only to the cells that we need to kill. So incredible promise. The other nanomedical platform that has phenomenal promise is diagnostics, where we actually have made lab on a chip, where you can use a drop of blood and through a microfluidic device perform 30 assays simultaneously and get a wireless digital readout. So the promise of nanotechnology in medicine is really moving forward very rapidly. So what are the lessons learned from nanotechnology? We have the leadership to push the boundaries of innovation. We have the scientists, we have the visionaries, we have the enablers, we have the tools. We're still developing in all the areas, and that's where you come in as you move forward to figure out what your place is and where you would step in. Progress is faster through integrated strategic planning and through collaboration. Much of the research that the agencies are funding right now is to develop centers. Centers may have 12, 13, 20 partners. So we're not asking you just to collaborate here at SUNYIT. We're asking you to collaborate with laboratories around the nation and in some cases around the globe in order to advance the science. You each bring something unique to move the science forward faster. And there's a new focus in nanotechnology on integrated learning and collaborative partnerships. And here we're talking about physicists, chemists, biologists, toxicologists coming together with engineers, with materials developers, with entrepreneurs and congresspersons. And we're doing this through collaborative partnerships that extend beyond the scientific collaboration I discussed earlier, but now involve industrial partnerships, foundation partnerships, international governments coming together. So we've expanded the concept of partnership. So these are some of the roles that are critical to advancing technological innovation and have proven effective in nanotechnology. But I'd like to spend a little bit of time as you move forward thinking about the exciting breakthrough you're going to sponsor, about the challenge of an emerging technology, and that is to simultaneously develop products and processes and yet manage the unintended consequences. So what do I mean by that? We all remember when pesticides were first developed and they prevented rust and pesticide damage to crops, so we increased the world food supply. And then we found out we started killing off the fishes and the birds because of contamination of soil and water. So as we look in nanotechnology, I'm very proud of the fact that we have a parallel track to scientific development that is assessing effects on public health and the environment. But this is not a challenge just for nanotechnology. It's a challenge for an emerging technology and for all of us. So when we use converging technologies to benefit society, we're asking what is desirable to the user, what is possible, and what's viable in the marketplace. These are very practical questions that drive our daily work, especially from an engineering and technology perspective. But I'd like to take a moment just to look at the ethical challenge that faces each one of us as you and I together move technological innovation forward. Here is the book I showed you earlier about a new DNA sequencing technology which increases data storage density. And here is a cover from The Economist that talks about morals in the machine, teaching robots right from wrong. So there's actually a new field developing on the ethics of robotics and artificial intelligence. So why are we doing this? Most of us, especially if you're a sci-fi buff, remember Isaac Asimov's rules of robotics. And actually the 0th law, because it's the summary, is that robots should do nothing to harm mankind and should do everything possible to protect mankind. So now, using nanotechnology and other advanced technologies, we've created drones that fly in and bomb buildings or take out targets. And now we're sending drones to places where there might be civilians. That's an extreme example. You have a computer in your car. You have artificial intelligence in your car that may drive your car. There's examples in the Netherlands where they have a fleet of automatically controlled automobiles. So these things are real. And now you're driving down the street, part of your car is computer controlled, and the machine has to decide whether the car malfunctions and it's going to crash into people on the sidewalk or save the driver. You're asking the computer to make an ethical decision. You're asking a computer, artificial intelligence, when to release its bomb payload or not. So these are real, and they're in our lifetime. And so this serves to show us the ethical challenge. And I'm not sure what ethical challenges are going to develop here, because if you can read at the bottom, it says the NS-5, what will you do with yours? Wow, there's an ethical challenge. So this is also an exciting time, because this is a challenge we get to participate in. And you as scientists and you as engineers are a critical voice in the development of ethics and moral challenges, of deciding when the technology you're developing advances society, is culturally good, is good for public health, is good for the environment, or perhaps not. Nothing is risk-free. In nanotechnology, we think we have the ability to minimize the risk and maximize the benefit through precise control of engineering function and product. We also have to grapple in technology innovation with sustainability. And although you had this a few years ago as one of your themes, it's integral and it's very important in technological innovation. And here we look at an example of social, environment, and economic interface. And I just want you to be aware that as you develop technology, there are environmental, legal, and societal implications. So I have this lecture from Freeman Dyson here, because in it he says, I'd like to take the new technology that serves as toys for the rich and make them necessities for the poor. He also believed in converging technologies because he thought if we could just develop solar energy, genomics, and the internet, we could solve poverty. A visionary of sorts who actually can propel us forward. So we have to think in terms of the new nanomedicine drugs that can target your tumor precisely may not be available to those without the means to afford them. So that's an ethical dilemma, a social justice dilemma that we face. So although we're a scientific community, the landscape for technological innovation is much larger than just the science that you do. And so you have to think in those terms as you move forward. And some of this thought process then will guide you to where is the right spot for you in technology. So let's come back together to the university setting. This is an example of a university innovation pipeline that I borrowed and adapted from the University of Michigan. So I took all their logos off. And what's important is that here's the faculty and students. You are the drivers for technological innovation, and this is well recognized. This is the gem of the American innovation system, is our universities and our students and our postdocs and our faculty. And the rest of it actually becomes quite boring. This is the exciting part, where the ideas happen. This is the funding part. And then it gets exciting again in the middle, because this is your idea, your product, and it develops over time. And then it comes back through what's essentially a new component in the university structure and in the scientific and faculty mindset. Now we have to think about entrepreneurship, another theme that you all have dealt with here. And you have to think a little bit like businessmen, developing a prototype and a marketing plan and a lot of other things that we never thought we'd have to do in graduate school. And so this comes into the university pipeline. But what we're fortunate is that universities are developing infrastructure. They're starting to assess business climate. Shown here is a stricture in the pipeline. That's certainly true today, isn't it? And patent issues. These are things that are part of that bigger landscape. And even in your university environment, more so in graduate school than undergrad, will these become questions for you to grapple with. Again, it's an exciting time that pushes the boundaries of your thinking and the box that you're working in. But if it comes out on the end, you have viable companies, expanded opportunities for faculty and students. So many people say it's worth it. I think that we now are developing better infrastructure to assist faculty and students through that process. And that makes it more exciting for you in that you can see the idea through to the end. So there's a great opportunity there for you. So I'd like to close by talking about a few things that may be useful to you over your scientific career, over the next year, wherever it helps. And so the first one, based on what I showed you, would be to recommend you defrag your education. You used to be a physicist, you used to be a chemist, but now we're calling on you to converge the disciplines of your education and integrate them into new ways of thinking. Why? Because you'll think differently. You'll conceptualize a problem differently. You'll form your hypothesis differently because you have more inputs. So things that were seemingly dissimilar are now quite similar. My husband is a geophysicist, and he works on seismic waves. And I did some physiology for a while on the inner ear, on the hair cell that conducts sound. And one night at dinner, we're both discussing S&P waves from totally different perspectives. I'm the biologist looking at the ion channel that caused the wave to happen, and he's looking at energy put into the ground and the waves reflected off the ground. Converging science, different ways to think about things. Find your aha moment. So what does this mean? This is the moment, the time when you conducted an experiment and you looked at the data and you said, that's not what I thought was going to happen. What do I do now? This is where the next innovation, the next technology comes from. It's where the physical laws, the biological laws say it's not what you thought. There's something here that you didn't factor in, that you don't know about yet, and you're going to have to discover. So you will have those moments. Ask your question. I love this. Sometimes we get intimidated. Sometimes we think our question will just solve itself. Our questions are unique and they're critical. Find the one you're passionate about. We each have a piece in the puzzle. You're not the whole technology innovation pipeline yourself. You have your collaborators, you have your enablers, your tool makers. You're going to be working in groups. You're going to be working with colleagues. So ask your question, find what you're passionate about, and then go after that. Watch for the bubble up effect. If you think you have a new idea, chances are it's bubbling up other places around the globe. Our globe is so small now, given our communication devices. And any good idea, usually the science ferments. I don't know if it gets out into the ethos or how that works, but lots of people catch it, bits of it. Mark Zuckerberg was not the only one to try and think up new ways for society to connect through the internet. Lots of other people did. First foot through the door. Who are your collaborators? How are you moving? What are your resources and infrastructure? So that's what matters. But if your idea is right, especially if you're going against dogma, especially if you're going against the traditional way of thinking, watch for it to bubble up because it will reinforce your thinking and it might inform it a little bit better. I want to give you a little example from my own history about what this looks like, because the aha moment doesn't just hit you over the head. It frequently sneaks up on you. I said that I was a physiologist and I worked in clinical lung disease. And it was a lung disease, and that's what everybody said. And if you breathed in a certain material, your immune system got activated, and then it went on and gave you disease. And, you know, what I found out when I was a postdoc was that you could first detect the immunologic response to this material in the peripheral blood. And they said, these clinicians that I was working with, and I nodded, good postdoc that I was, and went on. And one day, I'm walking down the hall, and I go, that's not odd, that's data. And I sat down to figure out how this lung disease could actually start through the skin to cause a peripheral blood response before a lung response. And that was the great part, and that's why you have to ask your question and be passionate about it. Because everybody verbally patted me on the head and said, yes, Sally, dear, but it's a lung disease. And I said, okay, watch. And that's what you got to remember. You've got to take the challenge, maybe not too publicly, maybe you want to work quietly till you bring it further along, but you've got to find your question that you're passionate about and go after it, even if people don't believe you at first. And then the bubble up effect happened for me. Somebody was developing a mouse model of asthma, and unless they painted the skin of the mouse with the chemical before challenging the lung, they couldn't get the mouse to respond. Skin before lung. Somebody in Europe was developing a hypothesis for how the skin immune response worked differently, bubbling up. So these encouraged me to move forward. So these things happen, and they can be very subtle, but you have to watch for them, and you have to be aware that they can happen. And then I want to close by reminding you to remember the big picture. Science is like a chess game. It's why we play it. It takes all of our intelligence, ingenuity, and skill to be good at it. We work long hours because we love it. And here, if science is like a chessboard, you need to find your place on that chessboard. I'd like to think most of us were going to be visionaries, but let's be practical. Most of us are the enablers. This is exciting. The visionaries can't do it without us. You're the critical linchpin in technological innovation. So find your critical question, your passion, your place in the innovation pipeline, and you're going to have an outstanding school year and education. And I wish you the very best.
So, Dr. Tinkle, thank you very much for a very, awesome lecture and inspiring words. As a token of our appreciation, I'd like to present her with a SUNYIT medal. It's the SUNYIT medallion inscribed with Sally Tinkle, Ph.D., Convocation 2012, August 30th, 2012. Thank you very much. Just as a public service, we have a few minutes, do we have questions that you would like to ask Dr. Tinkle? Dr. Cool.
Very informative. I'm writing a book on psychology of technology, and I learned a lot today. One of the problems I'm facing in my write-up is that there's a lot about scientific basis in philosophical terms, what we call it as philosophy of science. Kuhn's work, Popper's work, that are great. And I have gone through maybe more than 2,000 references. I haven't found even one on philosophy of technology. Maybe you can educate me a little bit. I learned a little bit about your art namesake, Stanley Shuttle's work at MIT, but I don't find much. Can you aim and suffuse me a little bit on that?
So I'm going to have to think about that because I have to agree. I read about the philosophy of science, but not the philosophy of technology. There are ethical treatises and treatises that can inform your thinking, but as you found, nothing specific. Maybe that's what they're waiting for you to write. Yeah?
I teach history here, so I look back at
Mhm. So I can tell you that in nanotechnology, learning from history, connecting the dots backwards, we from the beginning developed an environmental health and safety research strategy. We asked ourselves, what questions do we need to answer? What research needs to be done in order to develop a safer product? Notice I say safer. And we've done that. We've invested over $500 million to date since 2005 in environmental health and safety research. What we've done that we think is different is that we've married safety research to the product pipeline, to the life cycle assessment, recognizing that the research needs are different depending on whether you're the student in the lab, you're developing the prototype, you're the worker in scale-up, you're using the product, or you're the recycling unit taking the device apart again. So that has allowed us to more effectively address questions of exposure and hazard. What's different here is that we are doing it in parallel with a young emerging science. So we're doing it faster and sooner. What we have learned is that the challenge in nanotechnology is that the slightest change in a material changes the material properties. So I have this fabulous slide from Wang at Georgia Tech. It was in Materials Today in 2002, where he has 13 different structures of zinc oxide. They're all falsely colored, so it's a beautiful picture. You should look it up. Those materials are all the same chemical composition, but their electrical properties vary by shape. So some are piezoelectric, some conduct electricity, some are resistive, based on shape. So this is phenomenal. So if you change the shape of a belt and twist the belt, you can change the properties. So we're in the process of redefining a lot of the concepts we use for material safety research. So instead of grouping them by chemical composition or by surface charge, we're starting to think in terms of developing them by functionality instead. Because they're so small, we can't evaluate their safety based on the mass you are exposed to, because mass at the nanoscale is like irrelevant. But we found that mass translates to surface area because the surface area to volume ratio is so huge at the nanoscale. So now we're thinking in terms of normalizing our data to surface area or particle number. So pushing the boundaries of how we do science. The nanosilver socks. Nanosilver, we have determined that solubility is a critical issue. So nanosilver dissolves and all of the toxicity we're seeing is associated with the ion form. So that's the direct answer to your question there. Yeah?
I like your diagram, the one from the University of Michigan, you emphasize the perspective on the students, but being a professor in digital physics, I also saw what the effect, the constricted effect of the annexation, non-economic. Recently,
I repeat myself, but our university system, our students, postdocs, faculty, are the gem of this nation. And one has to think there are more ways to balance the budget than by not funding students. We cripple ourselves for decades when we do that. It's less optimistic to have to say that the United States is losing ground in nanotechnology globally. We are still recognized as the leader in fundamental nanotechnology research. We are losing ground worldwide in applications and in manufacturing. So anything that decreases the intellectual capacity of this nation decreases our scientific leadership worldwide. I don't have an answer.
One last question.
I'm a professor in communications and information design, and as a coordinator of so many different organizations, so many people making different ideas and patents, what are your feelings towards intellectual property, and how will we go forward in managing intellectual property?
So this is just a critical question that we run across all the time. And what we try and do from the federal government's perspective, from the funding perspective, is to fund pre-competitive research, because we have great respect for not just the patent process and intellectual property, but the right of an individual or a company to own their intellectual property. So we try and advance the science by working on this side of the fence from that. And the other thing we do is we try and partner with industry where we can work in that pre-competitive space so that we can then leverage that aspect. When we talk about inherently governmental research, I like to think of it as the research that can't be done without the federal involvement because of the breadth of the research. But then we should do the research that we then hand off to industry, because that is what helps make this nation great and our economy great. So from the federal perspective, I want to do that which you can't, but then hand off what industry can then take over and utilize.
Great. So before I ask Provost Durgan to come up and close this ceremony, a couple of quick announcements. The second of the Nanotechnology Forum will be today. Shortly after this event, we'll take a quick break, and then we'll begin Nanotechnology Forum number 2. Dr. Lisa Frisdorf will be presenting a really wonderful talk. I think I'm interested in listening to what she has to share with us with respect to growing the nanotechnology education pipeline. The other, the Nanotechnology Forum number 3, which happens to be President's Lecture Series number 2, which will be on the 3rd of October, Thursday. Dr. Ludwig Martinu from Ecole Polytechnique will be presenting. There'll be a lot of slides, I'm told, looking at nanotechnology applications in aerospace and other industries. So you're going to see some of these fancy technologies that are deployed on aircraft and other devices. So it'll be a really, really interesting talk on Thursday, October 3rd. So with that, I'm going to ask Dr. Durgan to come up and close the ceremonies for us. Thank you.
Okay, so convocation, the gathering of like-minded people to talk about important issues of communal interest. I think we've satisfied that need today. We've set the direction for the academic year. Innovation, terribly important to each one of us as individuals, important to our institution, important to our community, important to the state, important to our country, and important to the world. So we've got a good direction, a good vector to guide us for the upcoming year.
I hope that most of you will be able to return to continue this forum with Dr. Friedersdorf in a little while. This will be a great opportunity for us to continue and to engage more deeply in discussion of innovation at this institution and of nanotechnology in the direction that we're going to take in the future. So let's give one more round of thanks to Dr. Tinkle. And we'll see you in a little while. Thanks so much.